Hey everyone, welcome to another episode here of Simple Programmer YouTube, Simple Programmer podcast now that I've got the podcast, if you're watching or listening. I've got another interview for you here today. I know a lot of you have been liking the interviews, and I think this one you'll find pretty interesting. I'm interviewing Marcus Blankenship, and he's someone who has left his job. I know a lot of you are kind of doubters that people can actually do this, and so I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. I always talk about how to quit your job and how I did it, and but I haven't had too many other people's stories. So I thought this would be kind of interesting to talk to someone else who's gone through this, who's taken the leap. So welcome, Marcus.
Hey, John. Thanks. Great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you as well. So why don't you give a little kind of intro for everyone to let them know who you are, what you're about?
Yeah, absolutely. I started programming way before, probably many of your audience did, and when I was a kid in the like early '80s, and sort of got the bug and went to college in the early '90s and got a job. And I really had this great, amazing software engineering job at a manufacturing company, which happened to be headquartered, big global manufacturing company. I've gotten to travel around the world with them when I was an employee. But I had this really amazing career with them, 14 years as a software engineer and a software engineering manager, and I got to work in digital marketing. And I mean, I just loved the company. But about 2007, I got the bug that there might be more to life.
Right.
I sort of, like, I don't know whether it was age or just something made me wonder, like, hey, is there more? Am I really going to be able to retire from this company? And like, I don't know. So I met this guy at my work, and he's like, hey, do you want to help me build a website for somebody here in town? My wife's hairstyle, the company my wife works for needs a website. Do you want to help? Well, I was a software guy, but I'd never built a website, let alone a marketing website in my life. So of course I said yes. Right? That's how we do it. Of course you did, yeah, right? And I didn't know how much to charge, and that can be a whole other, we can get to that if you ever want to talk about pricing or whatever. But I was like, oh, sure, how hard can this be? And I thought, because, what we should do is, though, let's make it sexy. This was 2007. What was sexy in 2007?
Flash.
Do you remember?
Flash.
That's right. Of course we made it Flash. That's right. But we had a business background. We wanted this gal, to be able to maintain her own content. So, let's back it with Drupal. Yeah, this is a great idea. I had no experience with Flash or Drupal or anything else. Never even built a website, let alone a marketing website. And somehow we got it done. Now, I say this to tell you, this was the first project of something that became a business that changed my career forever, but at the time I didn't know it. I thought it was just a little side thing. So we did take a little bit of money for it, and man, was it hard. I mean, it wasn't just hard technically, but after a couple of weeks of optimism, that gets beat out of you pretty quick when you're working with Flash, as I recall. I found that, like, here I had to work 50 hours a week at my regular job.
Yep.
And I had to work, and then of course I had a family, and then I had to try and deliver this other thing on the side. Fast forward about 8 years now, and I've quit my job, started a company, ran it with my partner for 7 years. We had 11 employees, and we're doing $1 million a year in revenue. That folded 18 months ago, and now I've basically reinvented myself into a business advisor for people who don't want to make all those same mistakes. But yeah, I quit my job, and I'm proud of it. I feel like this is like an AA group,
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting just to pick apart, a little bit about your story too. Just the idea that you jumped into this opportunity that you knew nothing about, using technologies you knew nothing about, and I think that's like, I mean, I think a lot of people are waiting for this, like, just kind of drawbridge to fall and the path to be laid out for them, and then it with nice street lights, and then they could just, okay, there's the path to quit my job.
That's right. The light from heaven comes down and shows you where to go.
Right, but that didn't happen for you, right? I mean, do you feel like that's an element that's just required? You got to just go and do it? Or
I,
not that you should just quit, but you got to go and do things that make you uncomfortable.
well, I think you do, and I think it's really important. You said don't just quit, because that's actually been one of the keys. I worked. So I started with the one gig, and
Yeah.
that we finally got it done. 4 months of coding in Flash to do something for $1,000. I mean, I think it was like $1 an hour or something.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
And then we did it, but the crazy thing is, so then we thought, well, we have a real company because we took $1. So
Yeah.
let's go meet with the Small Business Administration people, and of course they said, well, what you should do is sell packages at a fixed price to build a portfolio. So we did it 5 more times where we built things for like $1,000, and they were taking hundreds of hours.
Yeah.
And it didn't take too long before I realized, like, what am I investing in? And the more I did it, the more excited I got with the thought that I could have my own business.
Yeah.
Like, it became more real. It was small. It was a fledgling thing. Now, a little bit of backstory. My wife is in nursing school at the time. I have 3 teenage kids at home, a
Yep.
mortgage, 2 car payments, a second mortgage. I mean, I've got all the stuff that people say, you're stupid. Oh, and by the way, it's 2008. What happened in 2008 in America?
Oh, yeah.
Worst financial crash
Yeah.
in 25 years. So my timing was, as always, impeccable.
Yeah.
So I guess the point here is I didn't quit right away. I actually worked this thing as a side job for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see if it was going to work, and I was risk adverse. So while I didn't wait for a light from heaven, I also didn't put all the eggs in that basket. I kept going to my day job 50 hours a week, and I found ways to continue to run the experiment.
And see, and I think that I mean, if you think about it, like if you had just said, "Hey, we got this job making a website for a hairdresser. Let's quit our jobs and let's do this thing," and you made $1,000 and it took you 100 hours to do it, you'd have a gun to your head, right? Because you'd be like, "Oh, this isn't going to work. How are we going to afford it? How are we going to pay for things?" Right? You'd be going into debt. It just, like, a lot of people think that that's, and just the fact that you said it took like 4 or 5 of these where you're basically taking a huge loss to get a lot of people don't realize how long it will take them to get the hang of it before it actually starts being profitable, and then they can quit their job, and then they can do that. You get to that point where the path is lit up and laid out for you, because it's like obvious you should quit your job now because you're actually making money from your side business, as opposed to just, man, I'm going to save up 6 months worth of salary and really, really hope this works.
Right. No, hope is a terrible strategy. And, in the moment, it was really frustrating to get up. I had to get up at 5 a.m., go to my job, go to my side job for 3 hours. At one point, we'd rented an office. So my partner and I would show up at 5 a.m., work for 3 hours, go to our day jobs, get off, work at 6 p.m. or 5 or 6 p.m., go in for 3 more hours, and then go home. I mean, these were long days, right?
Oh, yeah.
All for something. And I was making pretty good money at my day job. And,
Right.
and it had to be secret. My day job couldn't know because they were super weird about side work, right? So that's a whole other story. But I just kept thinking, like, I hate this, and I want it to go faster. I want it to go faster. Now, the interesting thing is, fast forward to the point when I left, and I'm sitting in my office, and I have all these employees. My partner and I talked really longingly for the old days, when it was him and I in this tiny little office in the morning. Now, why would we do that? Well, the game was so different.
Yeah.
We could afford back then, when you're small, you can afford to make all kinds of mistakes. And I really mean afford to. Like, if we screwed up, we didn't put our mortgages on the line, right? We kept our day job. Right. If we had to give a client back their money, okay, we could do the honorable thing, the thing that we'd all love to do, because we kept our day jobs. So it really was like a perfect laboratory of safe learning to keep your day job while you build this thing on the side.
Yeah. Well, and plus, I'd love to hear what you think about this, but one of the reasons why I always tell people to keep their day job is because I've always found that, or at least being an entrepreneur now running my own business, I found that working a day job and then working on a side business was good training for just how much work you put in when you actually work for yourself, as opposed to, getting into the office, sipping some coffee on your employer's time, and, maybe I'll check the news, right? It's like, the amount of work that I find that I do, like a full day's worth of work for me now, working for myself, is way more than I ever did on someone else's time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it was almost like boot camp for a couple of years,
Yeah,
right? And I remember I wanted to quit sometimes because it was hard. And I remember when jobs would go badly or clients would be difficult, I'd think, oh, this isn't worth it. But in the end, when I went to my employer, it was so different. I actually started acting different in my employer.
yeah,
Like, I just couldn't help but be less tolerant of the baloney and think about, like, if this was my company. And that actually got promoted like a couple more times just while I was working on the side.
sure, yeah.
Because it's kind of reminds me of that movie Office Space. I always tell people I stopped caring about what didn't matter, and all of a sudden, really, this is true. All of a sudden, I was reporting to the vice president of IS,
Yeah.
and it was just hilarious to me. And I just kept thinking, maybe the less I care, the higher I'll go in the company. I'm not sure that's the strategy I wanted to go with, but that was the outcome. So.
Well, I think there's a bit of that fearlessness, right? Because when you have nothing to
Yeah.
lose, you make the right choice. It's like the same thing in poker. Like I used to play poker a lot, and it was like if you're playing above your limit, you can't. It's not that you don't have the skill; it's you don't have the fearlessness to
Mm.
play. When you have 100 times your buy-in as a bankroll, and you're playing at that limit, you can make all the like you can play your perfect game. And I think maybe there's the same element there.
Exactly. So when it's small and there's nothing on the line except for your craft and $1,000, I remember we actually had to eat the $1,000 a few times, right?
Yeah,
Like we did it wrong and we had to rebuild it or whatever, and we'd lose jobs, little
yeah,
tiny jobs. But it was all about like just going after it and knowing that the only thing that was on the line was our egos.
yeah. Now, tell me about the point when you actually made the transition, because you said
Uh,
2.5 years. We have a similar story. I spent 2.5 years working my side job business while working my full-time job. But for me, like the day that I was able to go and tell my boss, "Hey, I'm done. I love working here, but I don't need to work here anymore." What was that day for you, and how did that come about?
John, I wish I could say it was as good as yours. Yours sounds pretty good. Like it sounds like exactly what I would love to have done. But
Uh,
for me, I ended up getting in a political snafu between two other vice presidents who were
okay.
upset with each other. And I was working for one of them, and long and short of it is the company did not have a great attitude towards moonlighting, and the
Uh,
other one, his boss found out, and he decided he wanted to punish the other VP through me. So I get this call one day, come into my office, and basically they'd pulled all my phone records and they'd pulled all my emails and blah,
oh
blah, blah. Like,
no.
we think you're running another business. Does your boss know? I was like, oh yeah, because I was always super forthright with all my
Yeah.
bosses. I actually was most of the time, because I didn't think it would amount to anything. So long and short of it is they were nice enough to say, well, you can't be half pregnant. You've got to choose. And I'm really thankful they did, because I was able to just gracefully choose and say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to choose to take a chance. And I gave my notice, and my boss immediately said, great, let's put you on a 6-month contract at double your hourly rate and have you sit in the same office doing the same job because I can't let you go,
Awesome.
which just made all the people around me think, my gosh, what's happening? Like, why is he back? And why does he not care about anything now? You know? And
Yeah.
but I definitely knew that what I had built would at least sustain me for a while. I didn't know the end game. I had
Yeah.
no idea 11 employees and millions of dollars or whatever, but I at least had built the idea in my head that I could do it,
Right.
and that I could learn to do it.
Okay, okay, yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, given the same situation, which can happen anytime you're in a political. I mean, people think that regular employment is so secure, but
It's so
it's really,
safe.
yeah. But the fact that you now had spent all this time, I mean, that makes sense. Then you could actually make the choice and not have to worry. A lot of people would panic and be sending out their resumes looking for another job.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because it is actually a false security, right? I mean, if one guy gets mad at you, like he
Yeah.
can fire you. Just takes one. But right now, how many people would have to fire you, John, for you to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to find a different job"?
Right. Well, here, I mean, not to pull too much politics into this, but look at Donald Trump now. The dude can say he can say whatever he wants, and people pull contracts. He doesn't give it. They can't say you're fired. Only he can say you're fired, right?
That's exactly right.
He says screw it. I don't care. I got plenty of other money, plenty of other people, plenty of other customers. So whereas when you got when you're at the teat of one cow, that's it. You're kind of if they decide to withdraw, you're kind of screwed. So.
Well, and I don't want people here who are listening to think that I was like, I'm not a brave guy. I mean, I'm not special. I was at the teat of that cow. I was a company man, and really, like, I worked for this enterprise, and it was a great place to work for a while, but the bigger the enterprise gets, the more the fear comes in, the
Yep.
more the you better conform, right, is right in there, like. And I mean, let's just be clear. I don't want people who are listening to think that I was anything special. I overstayed my welcome, which is why eventually they said you should probably figure out what you want to do in life.
Yeah.
Um,
Get out of the tree and see if you can fly.
exactly right. I was the little bird in the nest who was like,
Yeah.
I'm practicing, right, but I don't want to leave. So I
Yeah.
had to be kicked out. So I just kind of want to make it clear that it's really one of these things. I feel like if I can do it, anybody can do it. And what it takes, though, is, for me, it took finding something little, and I didn't think I was running experiments. I thought I was doing something on the side, something just like, oh, I'll try this. And once I'd taken $1 for it, I had an obligation. And
Yeah.
that was really important for me because that obligation motivated me. I felt motivated enough to get up at 5 a.m. for months to work on a $1,000 website because I'd taken $1,000,
Right.
and that really weighed on me that I'd taken somebody's money. So if anything, I think if I were to do it again, I probably would absolutely. Well, let me back up. I would really encourage people to find a way to take a small obligation.
Yeah.
Take something that then is going to actually pressurize you to do the thing that you want to do. It's kind of a mind hack, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree because that's it's like burning the boats. But it's not as extreme as like quitting your job. It's a small obligation, something that you have to come through on this. You can't just say you're gonna. It's like throwing out those size 40 pants and saying, well, I only have 34 waist pants now. I have to.
Oh,
I'm either going to go naked or I'm going to wear these pants. So
that is such a great. Yeah, that's exactly right. And having been larger than a size 44 only about 18 months ago, I lost a bunch of weight. I can tell you, I had to go through that thing where you decide, like, okay, am I keeping the 3X T-shirts? I may actually have some in a drawer as like my just in case, but
yeah.
I have thrown out all the 42 size pants.
Yeah. Awesome. So what do you say about the people? Because there's always this, right? I always get looking for shortcuts, right? I always get these emails, and it's like, work smarter, not harder. I don't have to put in these crazy hours in order to start my own business and be successful. And they're kind of preaching this. I think a lot of people that become successful eventually start preaching this because they forget, at least in my opinion, what got them there. What would you say to kind of, I don't know, a lot of the younger generation, I think, kind of maybe might have this mentality. At least that's what I see is this. Oh, well, we could just work smarter. We don't have to work so hard to do this.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are 19, 22, and 25, 24. So they're definitely part of that younger generation, and they hate the idea of working a menial job, and they definitely want to work smarter, not harder. But when they look at what I did, the first thing they say is, "Dad, it can't be that hard if you did it." And they're right, but it's also a little bit like you don't really know how hard it was, but.
Right.
I guess what I'd say is you do have to earn the right to go there. And for me, earning the right to go there, it was really important that I had to actually work early morning hours. I had to work 16-hour days. And if nothing else, especially because I had a business partner, in those first 2.5 years, what I learned was that I could trust my partner.
Yeah.
He did not flake when it was hard, and I didn't flake when it was hard. And having a partnership, while in the end it's what broke the company, at the beginning it's the thing that kept me from quitting was A, knowing that there was someone there with me, and honestly B, showing me that that other person was willing to work hard as well. I think looking back, I'm kind of amazed that I did it, but it's sort of like, okay, this is a terrible analogy. It's like push-ups.
Yeah.
I am currently in the process of trying to get a little healthier. So I started about 2 months ago doing push-ups before I get in the shower every morning, and I started with 20. I could barely do 20. I'll be honest. I'll tell you now. I can now do 30. The first 20 are the easy part. The last 10 are kicking my butt every day.
Yeah.
And what I realize now is in a year, I'll be up to 100, and the first 90 will be easy, and the last 10 will be the ones that are kicking my butt. So I guess I'd say you've got to earn the right to do it, but that involves work. And if you can find a shortcut, if anything, I think you should be a little bit wary of it. If anybody's telling you it's easy, or like, yeah, all you have to do is put up a landing page and people will come and it's great, and then you put a buy button and you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
I mean, I think not only, even if it worked once, my guess is it was such a fluke that it's just going to fool your brain into making you think it's going to work again, which then it probably won't.
Yeah. There's a real good book on this exact thing called How I Lost $1 Million. I don't know if have you read that book?
No, but I'm going to now.
It's good. The guy tells the story about how he had all this success and made all this money, and it was a lot of it was based on luck, and he didn't know it until he lost it all. And then he realized just how lucky he was in the kind of the stock market and the futures trading that he was doing at the time. But,
yeah,
real interesting.
Now, John, when you left, did you like start freelancing or contracting, doing that kind of work?
No, mine was a little bit more of a clear exit because I had been building up the Simple Programmer blog and stuff for a while, and I've been doing Pluralsight courses on the side. And so by the time that I left, I had enough Pluralsight royalty income to basically replace my income. So I sort of had it was a very clear exit for me. It was very secure.
You're so
I'm pretty risk adverse.
I want to be like you someday. I'm going to have to interview you for my list. Well, for me, I jumped out there, and I remember the first job I tried to sell, I sold it. And I was like, this is great. The second job I tried to sell, I sold it. I was like, I am nailing it, 100% record. This is the shining light from heaven.
Yeah.
The third job, completely tanked. The guy just looked at me, and he was like, I wouldn't pay $1 for this, let alone $1,000. Why don't you go back and then redo your design and come and pitch me again? Yeah. And I remember at that point thinking, uh-oh, this has felt just super easy up until now. You just go in front of somebody and ask them for money, and they give it to you. And of course, that dose of reality was really important about that time to make me realize it couldn't be about, I was not going to be lucky.
Right.
I was just going to have to work hard and be persistent.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that part of it too. Is this like you said too about the push-ups? I think that was a really good, because a lot of people think, well, if it's hard now, it'll be hard forever. But they don't have the ability. Like if you can project yourself far forward in the future, and you're like, okay, well, in a year, I'll actually be able to do 90 push-ups, and it won't be hard. Like, I think that's maybe one of the stumbling blocks is people say, oh, it's too hard. I can't do this thing.
Yeah, you were at MicroConf this year, right?
Yeah, yep.
You remember the You Need a Budget guy talking about your future self is going to call you and tell you like, the car is going to break, right? You should save for that.
Right.
And I love that analogy because I keep thinking now, like, what would my future self call and tell me, this thing you thought was impossible wasn't that bad. This other thing's kicking your butt, though.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. So, so tell me now what you're doing. Because now you've had to sort of do. Well, let me ask another question before we get into that question, which is, could you go back to the corporate world? I always like to ask this question, like, how do you feel about it now? Like, could you give your freedom up?
Okay. Well, you just baited me there. Could you give your freedom up, right?
I guess you can think about how I feel about it, but
yeah, I think I don't
mean to lead the question.
I think I'm getting a sense of it. I'm going to be completely honest here. It would be hard. It would be hard for me to give my freedom up, But I mean, for example, I have been offered a job back at that company or other companies making a lot more money. So I had two business partners. After my company folded 18 months ago, they went and got jobs. One of them works for Disney, very corporate. But just having your own company catapulted them into salary levels that were 3 or 4x what they were making at the last company.
Right. Yep.
So first of all, realize that even if this thing fails, the fact that you can say, I ran a company for a year or 2 years or whatever, and now I'm re-entering the workforce, will instantly give you credibility beyond what somebody who never has is going to bring to the table. And I think it made them very valuable to employers.
Yep.
Because obviously they had that business mindset. These employers knew they could hustle. So I just want to point that out, that even if it doesn't work, going back, while it might feel like failure, usually you'll never go back to that same old job in the same old cubicle doing the same old thing, right? You will have just grown too much. The question of would I go back, it's one of these things where arrogantly I'd love to say, I will never go back. I will plant my flag, and I will, like Braveheart, I will die for it. But like, truth be told, if things got bad and I had to make my mortgage, my family's what's honestly important to me.
Yeah.
And I have worked plenty of crummy jobs that I hated. At 45 years old, I've learned that I could go back and work a job for a year, make some money, regroup. I can tell you I think I'll always have something where I'm my own boss. It may not be my primary income, and it has been now for 8 years, but I'm not opposed to like resetting and trying it again, especially if it was an opportunity to learn something really different.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I guess maybe a better question to ask you would be, how confident do you feel now that you can make your own way, you know what I mean, in the world, right?
I would say I feel highly confident. When my company shut down, again, I talk about that because it was like a super traumatic. It felt like a divorce. Like, it was just horrible. And we laid everybody off. Everybody else got jobs. And for me, I was able to say, I think I've still got some run in me to see if I can do this. And that was about 18 months ago. And honestly, I've made probably 3 times as much money per year as I did when I had my own company.
Yeah.
Because my overhead is nothing, and I'm only worrying about me. And I can also take amazing risks, like getting up at 5 in the morning to chat with you, even though, of course, I don't make any money from this, right? And I can give my time away in all sorts of crazy ways. And those, to me, are the kinds of risks that we take to gamble and see, like, what relationships pan out and what do we really love. And so, yeah. In general, I'm highly confident that I can keep going because of what I've learned of doing it on my own, and of course because of what I've learned from the Simple Programmer website.
There we go.
As well.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm always curious to see, because the perspective changes, right? Like, I think, you for a long time when I was employed, I wondered how could you even, like, how would you make it on your own? Like, how could you become a freelancer? How could you do whatever? Yeah. And now it's like, now it's so obvious. Now I have a million ideas. Like, if I weren't doing this, I could do 50 other things that could make a livable income that wouldn't require me to work for someone else. But for me, I just was curious about how much your mindset changed as well. So.
Oh yeah. Now I'm curious. Can I ask you a question? Like, you dabble in non-internet and non-technology kinds of businesses as well, right?
Right. Yeah.
And was it tough for you to make that shift? Because I certainly have thought about doing that. Because as you know, once you see opportunity, you see it everywhere, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing real estate investment since I was like 19. So that's how I thought I was going to retire always.
Wow.
I didn't understand the business side of it, and then I realized that now, I mean, still real estate is my, my security, like my retirement. I put all my money into there so that, that's guaranteed income coming out. But yeah, I mean, now going to the entrepreneurial world, so many other opportunities. Like, my vision is a little bit more clear. I think I'm not as skeptical of ways to make money. I'm skeptical of people who think that they're going to make money, but I see a lot of possibility where I didn't see it before, I think. So.
Yeah, yeah. No, once you change, I think you just can't ever go back to that old mentality that I'm going to sit in this chair and just be someone else's like resource for the rest of my life.
Right. Yep. So let me ask you now, as we kind of wrap this up. So what are you doing now? So what was the change after the company shut down to reinvent yourself again, to go the entrepreneurial road a second time? And yeah, tell me a little about the current business you're doing.
Yeah, basically, I'm a business coach for agencies and consultants and freelancers,
Okay.
and I use the word coach because it's a little advice and it's a little therapy and it's a little crying, and it's sort of like just having somebody who's been there who can kind of help you along the path because it's tough. Frankly, I think
Right.
professional services is a tough gig. I've done a little bit of SaaS advising and a few other things, but the reality is I love people who help people by providing them services. That's kind of where my heart is. So that's who I'm focusing on. And if I can, I want to tell this really weird story about how I got into that because it was a completely non-obvious thing to do.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to hear it.
So when the company shut down, I took on like an hourly contract as a freelancer coding Rails, which I am a terrible coder, but it was like I gotta pay the bills, right? So
Okay.
I will code Rails for somebody full time as a contractor, as a part of a team, and I'm so appreciative that that could be there. And it was a friend of mine who was like, "Yeah, just join us," and that was great. And I was part of Brennan Dunn's master class, and so I posted on his forum like, "I just shut my company down, and I'm happy to give anybody in the group an hour of my time to talk about what happened and or to help you not make the same mistakes."
Yeah.
That was the message. And I thought, you know what? People never call losers. Nobody's going to call me. This is going to be just like, but I just did it on a whim, right?
Right.
So the first guy calls and we do an hour session. We're just talking for an hour. Like, Bob, what's going on with your business? And we brainstorm ideas and he goes away happy. And
Yeah.
he's like, can we do it again next week? Hey, sure. Time, I got time, right?
Yeah.
Let's do it again next week. Sure. Fast forward 3 months, I was giving away 20 hours a week of my time to these people.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And and I was also working this Rails gig at like 40 hours a week. So I'm back in the hustle mode. And
Yep.
I'm getting up at 4 in the morning to talk with people on the East Coast. I'm talking with people till 10 at night. And my wife's like, man, it's like the beginnings of the business again. I thought it would never be this hard
Yeah.
again. And I was like, it's exactly like that. It's just like super low risk. Do something you love, try it, make an obligation. Yeah, I promised I'd talk to this person. I'm going to do it. And what I found was I love helping people like face to face. I love
Yeah.
talking with people and working through the fear and pain. And I thought to myself, is this a real business? And I started just Googling and I found people who charge money for it.
Yeah.
So I came up with these crazy, like, I basically just said to the next guy, yeah, let's do an hour. And then after that, I said, if you want to keep doing it, would you pay me money? And we figured out a monthly subscription rate, and that we've just gone from there.
Wow, perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. And I just love that, again, just to point out, again, you're willing to do the hard work, to put in the effort, and doing something that you weren't sure about, and then you eventually find the way. I think so many people drop off the path before they reach success. They're like that whole 3 feet from gold. And you seem to stay on the trail long enough to reach it. So I think that's a big inspiration for everyone out there.
I'm
That's
just not smart enough to know. My wife would say, "You're just not bright enough to know when to quit," And I appreciate her for that. But I can tell you this: the second time, instead of it being 2.5 years, it
yeah,
was like 8 months. And 8 months later, I've built this business. It's giving me tens of thousands of dollars a month in recurring revenue that I had none of that before. So I think my hypothesis is every time you go through that cycle, you get better at it. And
yeah,
you figure out, like, you can tune it. So for me, I'm actually kind of excited about the next thing that fails, and I get to reinvent myself because I feel like it'll even be a shorter cycle with even bigger impact.
yeah, yeah. That's a great attitude to have. It's well, if you don't fear failure, then what do you fear? Right? I mean, I think that's the right attitude to have. Just you can just plow on without fear. So you're going to make the right moves because you know that if something goes wrong, it's an opportunity. It's not a bad thing. So
And you're going to make the wrong moves, but you're going to recover. You're just going to keep plowing forward, right? And you're going to say, okay, don't do that, do this other thing, let's go. Because fear isn't like if you make your boss mad, he might fire you.
right.
Mistakes, the fear of mistakes is more, if anything, it's more about like, let's just learn as fast as we can and make all these mistakes, but be smart about learning from them.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. That's the key. That's the key. Awesome. Well, if someone wants to find you out there, they can go to what marcusblankenship.com and then
Yep.
/list to sign up to your
That's
list.
where my mailing list. I actually just yesterday launched a new weekly newsletter for agency owners, for people who are called agencyownerweekly.com, and you can sign up there. I'll be putting out the first content when I get back, and it's tough to run an agency. It's even tough to be solo. So if you're a solo person, but it's for owners of things. It's not for employees of agencies. An agency also means like software development shops, design shops, people who are doing professional service work.
Sure. Okay. Okay. So if someone wants to, if they're interested in your coaching,
Mm-hmm.
how would they contact you? And I'm assuming that again, probably the people that you'd be coaching would be not so much individual freelancers, but agency owners, or are you coaching individual freelancers as well?
Yeah, I mean, I coach individual consultants. Typically, they have gotten to the point where they're making enough to sort of afford that investment.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I'd love to hear from people. So email me at marcus@marcusblankenship.com, and love to hear your questions. If you want to get in touch with me, drop me a line, and happy to chat about almost anything.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Marcus. It was great to hear your story and to hear how you've reinvented yourself again. I think that'll be very encouraging to a lot of people that are looking to quit their job and also just the amount of the time that takes. I think a lot of people just are afraid to do this. They think they just have to do an all or nothing and just quit. They don't realize that they can build it up on the side. So it's good to hear a success story like that. So
Build it up on the side, build it slowly, and I promise someday you'll look back and say, "Oh, it was so good when I was small. It was so
yeah,
good."
exactly.
Thanks, John. Really
All right.
appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.